Now, the coming Friday is the 72nd Yahrzeit of the saintly Chofetz Chaim Z'tl v'Kodesh Livrocha. It is 72 years since the Ptire of the Heilege Chofetz Chaim. As it happened, the year when he was niftar fell exactly the same as it is this year. That Rosh Hashanah was on Wednesday night. Now he was niftar on the Friday before Rosh Hashanah, and that's the Friday before the Slichos. He was niftar on Friday afternoon, and there was a question whether to make the kvura in Radin straight away. But naturally, a lot of people, most of the people, would not have a chance to be present at the Levaya of the Heilege Chofetz Chaim. So they asked Reb Chaim Oizer, Zecher Tzadik v'Kodesh Livrocha, who was always close with the Chofetz Chaim, Reb Chaim Oizer, who was the Rav of Vilna, well famous all over the world. There is a story that a letter was once sent to Reb Chaim Oizer because, he was involved in helping all people in Chesed. So it was addressed to Reb Chaim Oizer, Europe, and it came to him in Vilna. He was so famous. Reb Chaim Oizer was the Godel, and he and Reb Chaim Oizer, that is the Chofetz Chaim, Reb Chaim Oizer, always worked hand in hand. And in fact, if they had a koil koire, like an appeal to the people about religious matters, so it was always the Chofetz Chaim insisted that Reb Chaim Oizer signs it first and he is second, because Reb Chaim Oizer, he said, was the Nossi, the head of the Klal Yisrael. And the Chofetz Chaim, although he was the Kohen, he was older than Reb Chaim Oizer, yet he insisted that Reb Chaim Oizer should be first and the Chofetz Chaim second. Now it happened that he was niftar on Friday afternoon, so they asked Reb Chaim Oizer what to do, to make the Levaya straight away or not. Reb Chaim Oizer said, he gave a psak din that because of the COVID HaTorah, the Levaya will have to be postponed till Sunday morning in order to be able to give a chance to many more people to come to be present at the Levaya for the COVID HaTorah of the Chofetz Chaim Zecher Tzadik v'Kodesh Livrocha. Telegrams were sent out from Radin on that Friday to all the Rabbonim in Poland, and it was marked, I have got a copy of the telegram even, marked that the Chofetz Chaim was niftar, the Levaya will be Sunday morning. I was at the time in our own town, which was called Ostrin. It was between Radin and Grodno, a small town. My father was the shochet there. So I traveled on Motzei Shabbos the whole night, because the means of travel was by horse and cart. And we managed to get to Radin on Sunday morning. That is the day of the Levaya. The Sunday morning was the first Slichos, as it is this year here. The Levaya itself, naturally, many people came, but a greater olam, Choshev Rabbonim, were not able to manage to come in time for the Levaya. But there was a very great olam, a great of Choshev Rabbonim, as many as possible, and the Levaya took place. Hespedim were going on the whole day until the afternoon, late afternoon, when the kvura, the burial, took place in Ran. Hespedim were made throughout the week, because many more Rabbonim from Poland managed to come, and the mood was very sad. We were all crying bitterly. We could not imagine that we will be able, the Klal Yisrael will be able to carry on without the guidance of the saintly Chofetz Chaim. He was involved in everything, even about the Kehilas in Poland itself, about Chinuch, about yeshivas, and about things which happened all over the world. If it had if it was a matter for the Klal Yisrael to decide, the Chofetz Chaim dealt with it. And therefore, we could not imagine what the situation will be like that. How will we manage without the Chofetz Chaim? Anyway, the question is that since the Chofetz Chaim was niftar, as years went by, year by year, his name increased all over the world in popularity. There is not a person, a family, who have not heard of the Chofetz Chaim and who does not want to know more details about the greatness of the Chofetz Chaim. In fact, I myself, here in Manchester, when I walked through the streets, very often small children of 10, 11 and so on, would stop me. Please tell us something about the Chofetz Chaim. His name has become so famous all over the world. Now, why is it that he became so great? The answer is that all his work from the very beginning of his growing up, of the many Sforim which he made, even incidentally, of course, the Mishnah Brura, which is well known all over the world, and we use it in yeshivas. Great talmidei chachomim have to consult the Mishnah Brura, and he always wrote Sforim in order to improve the religious status of the Jewish people. He wrote a sefer, How to Help Jewish Soldiers when they are in the army. And they had a lot of problems, a lot of nisyonos with kashrus, because they did not have the facilities that people have today, even in the army, that they are being supplied with kosher food. This did not happen in Poland. And therefore they had great difficulty with kashrus, with Shabbos, and many other things. So he wrote a sefer to advise the soldiers who have to be in the army, and advise them what to do and how to go on in order to be able to fulfill the mitzvahs HaTorah under difficult circumstances. He wrote, which is most famous now, unknown to anybody, about Lashon Hara. The Chofetz Chaim wrote a sefer about the evil of speaking Lashon Hara, bad things about other people, about rechiles and so on. And he wrote a sefer, and he based it on the pasuk in Tehillim, which says, Mi Heilege Chofetz Chaim, who is the person who wants to live, who wants to enjoy life, who wants to lead a life in accordance with the wish of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, a wish of the Rebbeinu Shalom. So then, a person, Mi Heilege Chofetz Chaim, Oyev Yom Lirastov, Netzoyer Leshoncho Mero. Keep your tongue away from speaking evil. Because people didn't understand the great trouble that they can make by speaking Lashon Hara. And people didn't know the chumres, the great sin that one violates the dinim, lavin, and asay in the Torah, not knowing the chumres, the severities of Lashon Hara. The Chofetz Chaim spoke, and he made bit by bit. It became known to the whole world about the great issue of Lashon Hara, and he managed, in our time today, many people, in fact, practically, there is not a person who has not heard that Lashon Hara is forbidden. In America, they organized organizations which was called Machsom Lepi, to a protection for the mouth for speaking, not to speak Lashon Hara. And this subject became very known to many, many people, and people are very careful from speaking Lashon Hara. The Chofetz Chaim wrote not just what he wanted to write, but he wrote whatever was necessary to improve the spiritual life of the Jewish people. He wrote about. He could have written many more sforim, but unfortunately he said that his time, he hasn't got enough time to devote to many other sforim. So that's why whatever he wrote, about 36 sforim, including the Mishnah Brura, which took over 30 years, 6 volumes of Mishnah Brura, which is being used in every yeshiva. Now, I believe that this occasion is more or less to send a message to the boys who are in yeshiva now in Russia. And Russia was known for many years during the communist regime that they prohibited the fulfillment of mitzvahs, of kashrus, of tefillin, of milah, of kiddushin. They wanted to root out the Torah and all the commandments, the 630 mitzvahs. And the Chofetz Chaim always used to speak about Russia, what will be with the Jewish people, that they live under under restrictions, that they are unable to keep Shabbos, unable to keep kashrus, unable to bring up the children in a Jewish way, unable to fulfill bris milah, and all the ikrim of the Torah. And he spoke about it, how we can help them. In fact, we do know that Pesach time, a lot of parcels used to be sent to Russia to send the matzah, to help them to keep something with which we could help them. About learning, he was very, very upset that the mitzvahs Torah, education, young generations are being brought up without any guidance, without knowledge of the Ribono Shel Olam, of the Creator of the whole world, about Torah, about Yira Shomayim, about Shabbos, about Yomim Tovim. And therefore, if the Chofetz Chaim would have been alive today to see the change that it is taking place in Russia, that even today that Baruch Hashem we are having, that there is yeshivas now in Russia, he would have been so happy and he would have sent his blessing to every boy, every person who is taking part now in a yeshiva, in a cheder, in a school, where they learn about Yiddishkeit, and he would bless them that they should be very successful and they should know their great responsibility, that they are going to rebuild the status of the fulfillment of Jewish Torah and mitzvahs in Russia. I had the great pleasure and the honor to spend 3 years in the yeshiva in Radin, and I used to very often come to daven with the Chofetz Chaim, because he had a separate minyan in his house. At that time, when I saw him, he was at an advanced age. He was nearly about 94, 97. We didn't know exactly his birthday, and he was. He had difficulty moving about. He was not very mobile. And because of that, he had a minyan in his own house. And if he wanted to come to the yeshiva to speak to the yeshiva, the special arrangements had to be made, although he lived very near the yeshiva, but yet there was a balagole, a person with a horse and cart, who used to take him to the yeshiva. Altogether, it was a distance of about 500 yards or so on. But nevertheless, he couldn't make it by foot. He had to be helped. And he never wanted yeshivalite to help him, because he had them, he didn't want to use the yeshivalite. So therefore, this is the way he used to come. From time to time, he used to come to the yeshiva to say a few words of chizuk, to mechazek zayin, about the dinim of the Torah. I would like to take this opportunity, while I'm telling you about the Chofetz Chaim, I would like to tell the boys in Pinsk, especially, or anywhere in Russia, where there is a yeshiva, where they learn Torah, where there is a Jewish community, where there is a Beis HaMedrash, where there is a mikveh, where they fulfill the mitzvahs of Taharas HaMishpocha, or whatever it is. I would like to say to you and give you the message alive from the Chofetz Chaim, that he would have blessed you, he would have wished you great hatzloche, because for years and years he was talking about the situation in Russia, and he was praying to HaKadosh Baruch Hu that a change should take place in Russia. My dear boys, I would have been so happy if it would be possible to see you personally and to speak to you and to tell you how proud we are of you, that you are learning Torah in a yeshiva, you are being brought up by mechanchim, those who bring you up to learn about Torah and mitzvahs. You are becoming the pioneers of the Jewish people in Russia, and we hope that things will continue, and it will spread the learning of Torah and mitzvahs and the fulfillment of the mitzvahs Torah in every community in Russia. Please remember that the Klal Yisrael is looking towards you with great admiration and great pride, and we wish you brocha ve'atzlocha, a lot of blessing and success for the future. Now I would like to tell you a little bit about the Chofetz Chaim himself. First of all, he was such a famous person. He was famous all over the world, Chofetz Chaim. And yet, if you wanted to come in to the Chofetz Chaim for a broche or for advice or so on, there were no shamoshim, there was no people at the door, there was no appointments, you didn't have to do anything. You just pushed the door and went in. Inside, you could see a small house, bare floor, just the boards, a table with a few benches, ordinary benches, just a board with legs at both sides. Only the Chofetz Chaim himself, very, very bare, very bare. And that's because, apart from the fact he didn't want to have a hanoe, a benefit from Olam Hazeh, from this world. He lived very ordinary. In addition to that, he would never take anything from the yeshiva. Yeshiva, the world famous, the Radin Yeshiva, which had 350 bochurim, from the age of 15 to over 35, some. And the financial position at that time in Poland was very, very difficult. People were absolutely suffering from a shortage of food, mamish. If you had something to eat, you were very, very happy. The Chofetz Chaim himself he existed from the effuse forum, which was sold, and at that time people didn't have the money to buy a sefer and give the money. So they used to take sforim, and then whenever they had a few pennies extra, they used to pay towards it. I have seen correspondence from the Chofetz Chaim to Dayan Hillman, who was one of the Dayanim in London. He helped him a lot by trying to distribute some of the sforim of the Chofetz Chaim, and whatever income he had, this is what he existed. I know from letters which were printed from the son-in-law of the Chofetz Chaim that even a couple of years before he was niftar, that his house were mamish very, very short of the basic things which he needed. And this is how it was. And yet, he existed under these circumstances. And they put in the letters that he is very upset that the yeshiva is under financial difficulties. In addition to that, his own matzav is very, very difficult. And his son-in-law asked if it is possible to collect from the people who bought his forum to pay something towards it in order that to have the very necessities of existence sent to the Chofetz Chaim. There are a lot of stories that before he sent out a sefer, he used to ask his daughter to go through page by page, because in case one page is like folded or not printed properly, it means that he would be deceiving people, selling a sefer which is not perfectly printed. He was so nizhar, he was so careful financially. He was such a great tzaddik. Now his house was very, very plain, and we used to come in the morning, we used to daven there, especially on Friday night, when before Shabbos, the Chofetz Chaim, his ponim was absolutely, we could see the Shechina which rested upon the Chofetz Chaim, Erev Shabbos. And you could see the greatness of that of the Chofetz Chaim. I started saying that if people wanted to see him, they just pushed the door and went in, and he used to sit on a chair with a tiny little sefer in his hand and always constantly learning. It is assumed, and it is well known, the Chofetz Chaim, apart from being the great tzaddik, he was known as the tzaddik, he was the great Goen, and he knew the whole Talmud, the whole Medrashim, Tanakh, Haloches, whatever he knew by heart. He was a genius. And we see it now from the Mishnah Brure that we learn in Yeshiva. We cannot get over it, the greatness of the Chofetz Chaim. Then it is known that people used to come to him for broches, and he tried to pacify people, to help people. But strange enough, there are a lot of stories that people who were not Shomrei Shabbos, who came to him, although he has never seen them before, he would detect, he would have a feeling that this person is not a Shomrei Shabbos, and he would say that, I'm sorry, I can't give you a broche, because Shabbos itself is the greatest broche for the Klal Yisrael. If you keep Shabbos, then you have an broche. If you don't keep Shabbos, I'm unable to add my broche towards you. He had such a sensitive feelings. He was like a novi, like a prophet. He knew everything which was going on amongst the Klal Yisrael all over the world. There was he hasn't got a telephone, he didn't have any secretaries, he didn't have any advisors, and yet it was strange enough that whatever happened all over the world, he knew about it. Very often, when the Mashgiach or the Rosh Yeshiva used to come in, he would say, well, is there any news? He used to tell them, there's a story that once there was a rumor that Stalin died. So the Mashgiach came in and he said, the Chofetz Chaim said, any news? So the Mashgiach said, there is a rumor, there is a call that the Rosh died. So he said, does it say that from now onwards they will be able to allow to learn Torah, to observe mitzvahs? So the Mashgiach answered, no, they don't say about it. So he said, in this case, it's not a Psura Tova. The Psura Tova will be when it will become known that even in Russia, one is allowed to learn Torah and to observe mitzvahs. And he all the time, he was hoping that a time perhaps will come where the situation will change. And it was like a sense of nevius, of prophecy, that he felt maybe there will be a time. Well, we can testify now that the time has changed, and we are going through a Baruch Hashem, a time that learning is allowed, and there is a great movement in Russia towards Yiddishkeit. Now, what I spoke to you, it was just off the cuff, and it's only a very, very few details of what was going on, of the life of the Chofetz Chaim. We would have to, now they wrote already 7 volumes of about the Chofetz Chaim, and I think they will write even more, because there is no end to the stories about the Chofetz Chaim, about his greatness and what he did for Klal Yisrael.